Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel and my first video for 2022. I'm really excited about this year. A lot will be happening. I hope that you have a happy new year and that lots of good things will come your way, and of course a lot of crafty moments. I thought for today to start with a celebration card, a birthday card, using the birthday cutie from My Favorite Things and the big balloon stencil. This card will be very festive, bright, and I'm using a new stencil technique. Well, it's out there for a while, but I haven't never tried it before, and I just thought I might share this as my first card. So here I have my balloon stencil, big balloon stencil from My Favorite Things. I had it a while and I never used it so far, and it's a shame because it's really a spectacular stencil. And I thought about using yellows for this festive card. Yellow is a really bright color and it always makes me smile. So I thought, well, start this year with a smile on your face and just have a really bright festive card. So I used these three kind of yellowish colors and I mixed and matched them a bit into this balloon. There is no logic in my ink blending. I just want a smooth transition between all of the colors, but I'm making sure that I have a bit of every color all over this balloon. And then next I will add some circles to get some sort of a bouquet kind of vibe. It's a way of photographing things where you have sort of light sources all over. There are, well, I'm not a photographer, but there are many ways to create that, and there are also filters. If you are not a professional, you can add a filter over your pictures if you want to with this, and that was sort of the idea that I got to do with this card. I will make another card with it, I'm sure of it, because I really enjoyed it. Since I don't know how to do this and I just had to test things out, I decided to take a few of my colors that I used previously and go over my balloon with those colors. And then next up I will take a white pigment ink to help me to get more of that bouquet kind of feeling in the balloon. I'm using Distress inks. It's like the last year and before. There are many inks out there and they all have different how do you say it? They all have something different. We will just name it like that. There are more pigment inks. You have the Distress Oxide inks, you have Distress inks, and every brand out there has also inks. The thing is, I really like the brightness of Distress inks. On the other hand, it's not the most easy ink to ink blend with. I have been doing this for years now, so I am really accustomed to ink blending with Distress inks. If you're new to ink blending, there are inks that will be easier to ink blend with, like Distress Oxides. They stay wet way longer. That's just making it easier to get the blend that you want. On the other hand, there is a chalky finish. But I must admit, I got first the Distress inks, then the oxides. The oxides helped me to get the feeling of ink blending, and then I switched back to Distress inks. Another thing, this kind of technique where you want that bouquet, Distress inks, they go into that paper straight away, so they don't stay on there. If you would do this with Distress Oxide inks, I think you can also start with a really dark color in the back, or even just black cardstock. Then just use your Distress Oxide inks on top of it and it will still show up, you know? That would be harder with Distress inks. So many ways. Definitely if you're new to ink blending, you can change up the ink. Or if you want to use Distress inks, then I would recommend Strathmore Bristle Smooth paper, which is a paper that also keeps that ink on top a bit longer, so you have more wiggle room than normal with Distress inks. So I started adding circles here and there, and I think you can keep adding as much as you want. At a certain point I was like, do I need to add more or not? And I wasn't sure anymore, so I just stopped at a certain point. But Again, it's all up to you. Add as many as you want to, add as many colors as you want to. You can dry this and go back on top of it with your white pigment ink and have like this different layers of white on top of each other. It will all be gorgeous. And the stencil that I'm using here is the bubble stencil from Fawn. But there are many circles out there. If you don't have stencils but you have circle dies, then you can always just take a piece of paper, die cut those circles out and use those die cuts as your stencil. There are many ways to get your circles on there. If you like color pencils and you have Prisma kind of color pencils, I think the white would show up as well. So just draw your circle, fill it up with the white. Many ways to get this, I think. So this is my background, and now onto the image. The image that I am using today is from my favorite things as well. It's called Birthday Cutie, and it's one of the designs from Rachel Miller. It has been released a while back, but I didn't purchase it in the beginning, but I got it recently for Christmas. So I thought let's use that and just have fun with it. So I stamped it out using Obsidian Gina Designs Amalgam ink, which is the black one, and I did that on Transotype Perfect Coloring paper, the paper that I use since last year, and I will never leave this paper. This paper is great paper. The colors that you add to it are really vibrant, which I love. It also gives you the opportunity to add lots and lots of layers if you need to. It's not always needed, but from time to time it might be handy if you have a color family that is really hard to blend, like the violets in my opinion. That can really help a paper that doesn't get oversaturated too quickly and just let you keep adding things. As usual, I'm starting with the skin or hair. That's one of the two things that I normally start with whenever I am coloring people. I have this basic color combination for skin tone. It's E13, E11, E01, and E00. But if you want to revisit the color combinations that I'm using, since last year I'm trying as much as possible to put all of the combination on my blog post for each part of the image, so that you have an easy reference whenever you need to. So definitely check that out. There is a link in the description box if you don't know where to find it. And then here I sort of lost track of what I normally start with, so I first did the plushie thing here instead of the hair, but the hair turned out great, so no worries. But normally I start with the two hardest parts for me personally to get it right, which is the hair and the skin tone, just in case. If that isn't working out, then I didn't already completely colored in the rest and put the effort there to then throw it away, you know. So first the hard parts, although it's not as fun to do, once you are sure that that worked out, you can continue with the rest and be sure that your image will be great. So here for the hair I did a bit of flicking as I try to do so. Also something that I discussed last year but maybe you didn't saw it, is people and coloring people. I avoided it I think 2 to 3 years of my card making career. Why? Because it's just hard. I find it really difficult. But then Rachel Miller came into the my favorite things, stamps, and also Tiddly inks later in the year. And I said it before, these two illustrators really help you when you want to get your hair colored like the way I'm doing here with the sort of flicking. Why? Because there are already lines in the hair, and that helps you to know how you can flick to make it look natural. And that's something that got me over the edge to start trying to color people. And the flicking thing personally now, it's easy. It wasn't easy in the beginning, and I still see this as one of the hardest parts of coloring people like this, but it's definitely easier when you have an illustrator or designer that is already sort of giving you guidelines to how to flick to get that natural style. And that's why I really love Rochelle Anna Miller, also Tiddly Inks, and there are probably way more illustrators and stamps out there that I don't know yet, but if they have some sort of guidelines, as I call them, then definitely try it out if you love them. I think it helps, and just having those is for me enough to try it out whenever I see something that I like. So my idea was to also use the yellow orangey kind of color in the coloring of this girl. Now there are many items that have to be colored, and I thought while yellow and purple, it works really well. They actually reinforce each other, in my opinion. So that's why I decided to first use the RVs for the purple pinkish kind of color and then start on the yellow. Now for my yellow combination, my darkest color here is a yellow-red one, so more an orangey kind of color, but that's good. It's a bit more contrast than you would have with only yellow markers, and I like that. And then here for the balloon, I didn't start all the way on the edge because I wanted it to sort of look like it's a really rounded image. There is more behind it, and that's why I just leave a tiny sliver along the edges to be colored in with a lighter yellow marker. Then the dress is also going to be in the same combos, and I'm coloring from darkest to lightest. It's what I decided on doing, but there are many ways to do Copic coloring or alcohol marker coloring in general. I personally tried it all. My first videos all the way back on my YouTube channel, you will see that I mixed all the techniques that are out there because there are many ways. But then last year I decided that for me just starting with the darkest towards the lightest was the best way to go, and that's why I kept doing that. But you do you, and whatever you feel helps you get the coloring that you want is the way you should be coloring. Okay, so before stamping my sentiment, I first heat set the background a bit, just to make sure that there wasn't any ink still wet, because sometimes it can mess up your stamping of your sentiment if the ink underneath is still a bit wet. Not always, but it can. So just to avoid that, I did that, and then I decided to use a MICRON Fineliner, a really thin one, the 005, to just draw a line. There is also a string in the stencil itself to add to this balloon, but then I saw the balloon on my image and there is like this really fine line, and so I wanted to mimic that a bit, but I didn't want to hand draw it, so that's why I used my T-square ruler. And then I will stamp the sentiment just using the same black ink as before. And I really like the idea of having it sort of coming outside of the balloon and being inside of the balloon. I think it gives something interesting. And then it was time to add everything together on my card base. So this is an A2 sized card, and I use the Tombow MAXI power tape to add this panel. It's a really strong tape, I really like using it. And then the image will be added using some thin foam squares. These are from Scrapbook Adhesives. Amazing thin foam squares, the perfect height if you ask me. And so I just made sure to add foam squares wherever I could see some empty space. It's just for mailing purposes, to reinforce it a bit so that it won't crease with the amount of letters that are sent out. And then I can remove the backings and add this image onto my card base. Isn't she cute? I love also the yellow, how it matches with the balloon that I made. Really festive if you ask me. And then I'm finishing this card using some glossy accents on the balloon. And that will be it. That is my card for today. If you want to, you can add way more embellishments. But that's it for me. So a really simple card, but I think with a lot of interest doing the background like this. And that was my first card of this year. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope truly that you have a spectacular year coming for you. And I'll be back soon with some new crafty inspiration. Happy New Year, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye!